Hi, welcome to your mind-body connection. My name is Xandra, and this yoga practice is all about getting back to the basics. This is a great practice for those of you that are newer to yoga, that are really curious about the alignment and some of the most common poses that we practice. And then for those of you that are seasoned yoga practitioners, regardless of how long you've been practicing yoga, I think it's really great to revisit and get back to the fundamentals of alignment. So go ahead and grab a yoga strap. If you do not have a strap, you can use a belt instead or even a towel. And then if you do have a yoga block, that will be helpful as well. If you don't, no worries. Even if you have a sturdy water bottle, that can be used as well. It's just about bringing the floor closer to you. So we will get started lying on our backs, and we will grab hold of our strap as we come onto our backs, just setting it next to your side as you begin to center into stillness for a few moments. So just extending your legs long, and then bring your right hand to your belly, left hand to your heart. And just take a few deep breaths here to arrive into your practice. That moment of awareness with how you're feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally. And yoga means union, to yoke together, connection. And it's this reminder that there is no separation between your mind, your body, your emotional state, your energy. And as we practice, we do our best to create more harmony, more balance between all the different parts of who we are. And breathing is as essential to yoga as it is to living. So getting more comfortable with taking deeper, steadier breaths in and out of your nose, and dropping your breath deeper within your belly. Feeling how the inhalation creates more expansion, more openness. And your exhalation allows you to ground down more and settle and release. And just a few more deep, steady breaths. And then now planting your left foot onto your mat, start by hugging your right knee in towards your belly. Now taking hold of your strap, and we'll loop the strap around the bottom of our right foot. So lengthen your leg up towards the sky. And right away, just notice how you feel within your hamstrings, the back of your leg. And if you are really tight in this part of your body, you might bring your leg down a little bit lower. We do want to start to feel the stretch here. So there can be some bend into your knee, but focus a little bit more on the stretch and maybe not lifting your leg so high up towards the sky if the flexibility isn't quite there yet. And then I like to have my hands a little bit closer up towards my foot so that my arms are straight. But if it feels more supportive for you to have your elbows on the ground with that extra support there, that can work as well. But just taking a few deep breaths, just really feeling into this opening. We never want to force it though, so you're always listening to your body's feedback. And you're using your left foot as support, so grounding down, feeling the back of your head all the way down into your tailbone, just root into your mat. And then releasing, and we'll switch sides. So just plant your right foot onto the mat and hug your left knee in. Just feel a little squeeze there. Now looping your strap around the bottom of your left foot and lengthen up towards the sky. So just check in, notice how this side feels. Might be really different or just a little bit from side to side. And then maybe the arms are straight with your hands closer towards your foot. It's okay if your foot isn't stacked right above your hip. Maybe you lower your leg a little bit further down. But we do want to feel into that stretch. There can be some bend into your left knee, but feel into this extension through the back of your leg. And just notice too, if you're tensing at all through the shoulders, through your jaw, just try to soften there. Breathing as deeply as you can, especially if you're feeling a lot of sensation. Remember, your breath allows you to settle into sensation, into discomfort with more ease, more awareness. We're here for just one more cycle of breath, maybe creating a little bit more of that stretch and release. And then releasing, just bringing your strap to the side. Hug your right knee back in and now extend your left leg long. But there is some engagement here with your left leg, so really press down through your left foot. And then holding on to the right knee with the right hand, start to open your knee out to the right. Bring your left hand onto your left hip. And just notice your range of motion here. So when it comes to our yoga poses, we are primarily doing internal rotation of the hips and external rotation of the hips. So when our leg was in center and we were just extending upwards, that's internal rotation. And now we're coming into external rotation. So your left hip might lift here, and that's okay. You can use your left hand as that gentle assist to drop the hip down, but we don't want to overly force into the pelvis. So there can be some freedom there of your left hip lifting. And we're just feeling into that inner hip stretch of our right side. Maybe you're using your right hand to draw your knee a little bit closer over for the last 2 breaths. And just keep getting familiar with these shapes we're creating. They are similar to some of our other poses we will be practicing today. Now coming through to center, and then we'll just take it into a twist. So using your left hand against the outer right knee and just draw the knee over to the left. Right arm can extend out. And you play around here as well with what feels best for your spine and your hips. So maybe your right knee is really hovering in space and your right shoulder stays anchored. Or maybe you're really pressing your right knee closer over to the ground, which then lifts the right shoulder, and that can feel like a nice stretch through the front of the right shoulder. You do what feels right for your body in the moment. Every day we're going to feel a little bit differently. Take one more deep breath in, full breath out, and then coming back through to center. And we'll do all of that on the left. So hug your left knee in, extend your right leg long. So bring some engagement into your right leg. Now right hand to right hip, left knee moves your knee out to the left. And we just notice any differences, big or subtle, from right to left side. Again, we're not forcing the knee over or forcing the right hip back and down. We're just noticing our range of motion, where there's tension in the body, and how we can work into that, creating more of this assist that is on the gentler side rather than really forcing the body into the shape. Take just a few more deep, steady breaths. And then coming back through to center, and we'll work into our twist. So grabbing hold of your left knee with the right hand, glide the knee over to the right, left arm reaching away from the body. And then just play around, explore with the depth of your twist, what feels best for you. Maybe the knee is further over and left shoulder is lifted, or it might feel better for the back, the hips, if you stay anchored through the left shoulder and your knee is more lifted. Last 2 breaths here, breathing in and out of your nose. The steadiness of your breath keeps your mind more focused within your body and your practice. Now coming back through to center, draw both of your knees in, rock a little bit from side to side, a little massage for the low back. And then making your way over to your side, we'll come into our tabletop position. hands and knees. So we think about supporting our joints here in a lot of our poses. So here in tabletop position, we are stacking our joints, shoulders above our wrists, hips above our knees, hands about shoulder width apart, knees about hip width apart. And then you can either press through the tops of your feet or have your toes curled under, whatever feels best for your body. Now gazing down at your hands and making sure that the fingers are spreading really wide. So if we feel tightness or weakness within our wrist, there's a tendency to kind of lift our fingers up. But we want to try to distribute the weight more evenly. And this may take some time within your body to really allow the fingers, the knuckles to root into your mat. And that's okay. We're patient with this practice in our bodies. Now, as you inhale, just drop your belly slightly, lift through the heart and the tailbone, feeling into your cow pose. And then exhale, rounding into your spine, curl the chin under, cat pose. Inhale, belly drops, heart lifts, feel the collarbones broaden. Exhale, rounding, navel hugs up and in. Now just moving with your breath here in and out of your cat-cow. And we are moving in and out of our spinal flexion. We're also feeling movement of our pelvis. We're also feeling movement of our shoulders. This is a great way to warm up, to move through stagnation. Let's do one more. And then coming through to a neutral position within your spine. Now, if your toes are not curled under, I do recommend now curling the left toes under. I feel like this helps just with stability a little bit more. And then lift your right leg up and back behind you. Now, there's a tendency here when we lift our leg is to lift more from the outer hip. But we want to internally rotate our right hip. Dial the toes straight down. And then now hug your low belly in and up. Feel that connection to your center, your core stability. Now reaching your left arm forward, finding your balance. Gaze is down, back of neck is long. And this is a great way to build strength into our wrist, shoulder, low back, core, and then there's a lot of strength and engagement happening within your right leg. So imagine that your right heel is pressing into the wall behind you. And also it can be helpful to imagine that you're balancing a glass of water right at your tailbone, right at your sacrum, so that you're keeping your hips as level as you can. Now release down. Child's pose, knees out wide, big toes together. Just shift back, soften into your body. And then coming back through to tabletop position, realigning, stacking your joints. And then now the right toes curl under, just helping with our stability, lifting the left leg up. And then notice too, if you tend to lift from your outer left hip, internally rotate your left thigh. Level the hips off, engage your core, find that strength there, and then reaching the right arm forward. Gaze is down at one point. So we call this our drishti. When we focus on one point, it's a very meditative eye gaze, and it helps with your balance, helps with your focus, helps you stabilize into your alignment. And we're breathing as deeply as we can. The deeper the breath, the calmer the mind, and the more we can just settle into whatever sensations we're experiencing. Now go ahead and release. Again, child's pose. This is a great pose to come back to anytime you need to rest more fully. Now making your way up, and we'll set up for our plank pose. So tapping back into a lot of strength as we realign our shoulders above our wrists, and then now stepping our feet back. Start to hug low belly in and up. Notice if you're collapsing into the shoulders. If it feels like that, try to broaden your shoulder blades away from your spine, or even just drop your knees. You will get stronger even with your knees down. But just start to breathe a little bit deeper here, the longer you hold it. And everything is turned on. So crown of head forward, heels pressed back, active legs, strong core, and we're feeling all that strength from the shoulders down into our hands. Take one more deep breath in. You got this. Exhale all the air out. And then if your knees are not already down, go ahead and release them. And we'll come all the way onto our belly, setting up for Cobra pose. So with Cobra, we want to press firmly through the tops of the feet, squeeze the elbows in, and then notice the shoulders. If they're really hiking up towards your ears, soften them away from the ears. We want to feel into spinal extension here, so we're not compressing into the low back. Tailbone draws down, low belly hugs in and up. And then barely putting any weight into your hands. Inhale, lift into your Cobra. So you're really using your back strength here. And then soften all the way down. Again, inhale, pressing into your Cobra, maybe a little bit more pressure into the hands. Notice if the shoulders are lifting. If so, drop them away from the ears. And then release down. We'll do that one more time. So just staying with our Cobra, inhale, lift maybe a little bit higher, but in Cobra, the hips are down, thighs are firming into the earth, and our elbows are bent. And then release all the way down. And then now coming into our Sphinx pose. So elbows are about shoulder width apart, hands are firming down. And again, we're feeling into extending through the spine. So lengthening from the tailbone all the way up into your neck. Take one more deep breath in, full breath out, and then release and just stack your hands on top of each other. Rest your forehead on top of your hands. Bend your knees, and then just let your feet fall from side to side. So nice little low back release here. Now making your way back into your child's pose. Feel your low back release. Now making your way forward into your tabletop position. So setting up for our downward facing dog. So when it comes to downward facing dog, it is such a wonderful pose that really brings that balance of strength and flexibility in. So as we come into it, hands are either shoulder width apart or a little bit wider. So if you have tighter shoulders, maybe taking that wider position with your hands feels better for you. So you can kind of play around with that. Now curl the toes under and lift your hips up and back towards the sky. So we are starting with a pretty generous bend into our knees here. And if you have tighter hamstrings, there's a tendency here in down dog then to round your spine to try to get your legs straight and your heels towards the earth. But we want to go for decompression of the spine as long as possible here as we lengthen our hips away from our shoulders. So with that bend into your knees, you can really feel into that length and spaciousness. And then just like you were in your tabletop, you're grounding as much as you can through the circumference of your palms and the knuckles of your fingers. Now your head is hanging heavy, so maybe even shake it a little bit, yes and no. Let any tension just release out of your neck. Now start to feel a little bit more into your arms and shoulder work here. So start to roll the eyes of your elbows more forward. Broaden your upper back, so feel the shoulder blades move away from your spine. And just keep breathing. It's not always easy just to hold these poses for a long period of time. We're here for just one more cycle of breath. So the knees are still bent. And then release, just let it go. You can come to child's pose. You can even sit back onto your heels and kind of shake your wrists out a little bit, especially if you're feeling it a lot there. And it does take time to build strength into our hands, our wrists, our shoulders, and our core, right? All of these are integrating together to create more stability, deeper alignment into our poses. Okay, so now coming back into your down dog, we are now gonna notice what it feels like to straighten into the legs. So start with that bend into your knees and then just start to walk your dog here. So pedal your feet back and forth. Notice how tight you are through the backs of your legs, all the way into your ankles. And then now start to straighten through the legs, but again, notice if you start to round through the back. If that's the case, I do recommend some bend into your knees in your down dog until you start to feel more flexibility through your legs. Now keep in mind too, your heels may or may never touch the ground. It not only depends on your flexibility, but also your bone structure as well. Take just 2 more deep breaths here. Again, feeling into that broadening of your upper back, shoulder blades moving away from your spine. And then now walking your feet all the way forward, coming into your standing forward fold. And the same principles apply here as you were feeling in your down dog. If you are really tight through the back body, I recommend bending into your knees, maybe even bringing your hands to a block here as you come into that forward fold. Because if we are tight and we try to straighten the legs, we're going to round a lot through the back. That starts to really tug and pull at your low back, especially if you have discomfort there. So with time and practice, we start to create more flexibility, more freedom, and then maybe we can start to straighten the legs more. But let your head hang heavy, shoulders are relaxing as much as they can. And then bringing your hands to your hips, bend into the knees, nice flat back, come all the way up to standing. Now feeling into our mountain pose. Mountain pose is the foundational pose for our standing poses. Even when we're changing around the arm position and the leg position, we want to feel into the central axis of our body in a way that is similar to our mountain. So your feet are grounding into the earth. There's a little bend into your knees. Start to feel muscle hugging into bone. And then low belly in and up. Tailbone draws down slightly. Roll the shoulders away from your ears, down your back. And then arms can be by your side. You can even bring hands to heart center. But start to feel the length of your spine, the crown of your head lifting up towards the sky. And maybe closing your eyes as you take a few deep breaths, feeling into your strength, your stability. And then opening your eyes, hands to your hips, and we're just stepping out onto our mats here. So when it comes to some of the most common yoga poses that we practice, our standing poses, there's a rule of thumb that can be helpful. Now you can go a little bit wider or shorter if that is better for your body, but this is a good way to explore setting up into the alignment. So you are stepping out as wide as you can to then align your hands and feet in this line as they come out. Okay, so again, that's just a general rule of thumb, but for most people, most bodies, it definitely is a good way to align into it. Now start to rotate your right toes forward, keeping your back foot parallel, and then bend into your front knee, warrior 2. So some things to think about as we come into the alignment. We want to stack the joints, right? Keep them supported. So your front knee is either aligned over the ankle or a little bit back behind, but we want to avoid moving too far over the ankle because that can be a lot of pressure on your knee joint. And then as much as you're reaching forward through the right arm, reach back through the left arm. So we want to feel shoulders right above our hips, so that mountain pose alignment in our upper body. There's energy through the arms. You're gazing over your right fingertips. Soften the gaze, find your drishti, and just breathe. Now straighten the front leg, and then we'll move over to the left. So pointing your left toes forward, bend into the front knee, and then just check in, make sure that your knee is stacking above. And something else I should have mentioned on the first side too is if we're tighter into our inner hips, there's a tendency for the knee to want to sickle in. So we want to press our knee over towards the pinky edge of our foot to allow that openness to happen. And then just feeling into that evenness, right? Shoulders right above your hips, energy through the arms. Gaze is soft, breath is deep. And then now straightening, coming back through center, just give your arms a little break there. And then rotating your right toes back forward, bend back into the front knee, lengthen out, and then coming into our extended side angle. So start by just bringing your right forearm onto your thigh, left arm lengthening up. So there's essentially this feeling of stacking the shoulders here. Now we don't want to collapse into it, so we're using our core to help stabilize and feel lighter with our forearm against our leg. Now, if you can go deeper, you can start to reach your hand closer to the earth. This is where that block can come in handy as well. We want to avoid collapsing into our side body. So you're thinking right ribs, lengthening away from the right hip. And then lastly, to extend it, we reach our top arm up and over. And we feel into this line of energy, top arm all the way back into our back foot. And then it's up to you where you gaze. So whatever feels best for your neck. Maybe that's down, maybe that's forward, maybe that's up. But as much as you feel the weight pouring forward into the front foot, keep anchoring back through your back foot. Take one more cycle of breath. You're doing great. Come all the way up. And then if you want to use your block, you can bring that to the other side as we set up for our extended side angle. So pointing your left toes forward, bend into your knees, so similar alignment like warrior 2. And then now bringing left forearm to left thigh, top arm up and over. Just start with the stacking. And just notice if you're collapsing, try to lift. So it's that rooting down through the feet, lifting up into our center that brings a sense of lightness into our poses. And then now we'll extend it, and you can play around with where you're placing your hand. Maybe you're going a little bit closer to the earth. Breathing deeply in and out of your nose. And then coming all the way up. You have your block, bring it with you. Now setting up for triangle pose. So triangle, same kind of setup. Our right toes point forward, but this time bring your back toes a little bit more internally rotated. So what that allows to, your back hip to do is slightly come in. So when you were on the ground and you opened your knee out and you were noticing how much the hip was lifting, that plays into this pose as well. So we don't want to force the hip back too much, because then we don't have as much freedom to tilt our pelvis and come into triangle pose. So I find that having a slight internal rotation of your back hip allows for that tilt to happen with more ease. So start to bump back, lengthen, reach your bottom arm as far forward as you can. So this is reminding your side body to remain long. And then bring your hand down, shin, block, ankle, maybe even floor, depending on your body proportions. But again, we don't want to collapse too much to try to get our hand down, right? We want to feel the spaciousness of this pose as we stabilize through our legs. And then again, just gazing wherever it feels best for the neck, but feeling this dual action of grounding to then expand and lift. Your spine is lengthening. Your breath is supporting you. Last moment here. And then coming all the way up, switching sides. So that similar alignment, front toes forward, back foot internally rotating slightly. So we're letting the back hip roll in slightly, allowing for that freedom of the pelvis to tilt. So lengthen out, right? So really reach, find that spaciousness, and then tilt. Have a little micro bend into the front knee as well. With each inhalation, create more space, more length. With each exhale, root down a little bit more, ground yourself, center yourself. So the breath has energy to it. The breath is bringing more life into these poses, allowing us to align into them with more ease. Now coming all the way up, and then we'll come into a wide-legged forward fold. So up to you how wide you go here. You can have some bend into your knees if you need to. You can even use your block as well as you come into that fold. Your arms can reposition themselves in any way that feels right. So you can even grab onto your ankles, more leverage there, peace fingers around your big toes. But again, just avoiding that rounding of our back to then go deeper into it. So feel yourself hinge from your hips. Now slowly coming all the way up. And then we'll rotate forward, just coming to the top of the mat. So right foot forward, step your left foot to the back. So coming into our warrior one. So we were just an external rotation of our hips with our warrior two, side angle and triangle. And now we're feeling into that internal rotation of the hips with our warrior one. So your back foot is angled. That will allow your left hip to roll forward. So there's that diagonal of your back foot. And then you're working your right foot as far forward as it feels okay for that lunge. Okay, so again, we're trying not to track knee over the ankle there. So drawing the right hip back more, left hip rolling forward, tailbone slightly draws down, low belly in and up. And then play with the arms. So arms can reach up here, hands can come to the heart center, whatever feels right for your shoulders. But there's this dual action of pressing forward, feeling the lunge forward as we press back into the outer edge of our left foot. Take just a few more deep breaths here. And then spin on to the ball of your back foot, step forward, and then step your right foot back. So before we come into the lunge of the front knee, just feeling into that internal rotation of your hips. So your back foot is angled. You can go wider, you can go more narrow. Really just depends on your flexibility, how you're built within your body, proportions, all that comes into play. So we're not so much worried about what we look like in these poses. It's all about how you feel. So as you come into the lunge, again, you can work your foot more forward if you have that room in the body to do so. Rolling the right hip forward, drawing your left foot back, left hip back. And then we're feeling into that internal rotation. Tailbone down, low belly in and up, thinking mountain pose in our upper body. And then arms can stay more at the heart center or extend upwards. And if you are extending upwards, feel this slight rotation of pinkies in towards each other. That's going to help broaden your upper back more. Take one more deep breath in. Full breath out. You're doing great. And then hands to the hips, step forward, top of your mat. Chair pose. So feet can be hip width apart, feet can be together. Just kind of depends, right, on how you feel. So a lot of this alignment, we have kind of these basic fundamental alignment cues that we think about, but it is so dependent on your body and what works best for you. The beauty of yoga is everyone is going to look a little bit differently in these poses, and we have some freedom to explore what works best for us. So feet hip width apart, you can even play with both. Sit back into your heels, back into your hips. So we want to feel more of that natural curvature into our back here as we come into our chair. And then gaze down at your feet and make sure that you can see your toes. If not, try to sit back a little bit more. And then again, arms can reach, hands can come to the heart center, but we are building into our strength. Legs all the way down into our feet. Hips are getting stronger, everything connecting here in the low body to get stronger. And it's not easy to hold chair for a long period of time, so just breathe through it. Last few moments, inhale, exhale, breathe in, breathe out, and then come all the way up, release. Okay, working into just a few balancing poses. We'll come into our tree pose. We essentially felt this on our back when we brought our knee out, but now we are doing our best to balance. So it's coming back to that external rotation of your hips. So feet about hip width apart, and start to anchor down through your right foot. There's a little softening through the knee, right? We're not locking out the joint. We're engaging our muscles in our legs, but a little bit of softening in the knee. And then start to feel that external rotation of your left knee. Now you can bring your foot to your ankle. You can bring it to the calf. Avoid pressing it into your knee. So if you want to bring it higher, it can be helpful to lift your foot into your inner thigh. And you're just noticing too how much you can open the knee out. So just like when we were feeling on our back, we're not trying to force the right hip back and then force the knee open, right? Allow some freedom there. With time, you'll start to feel into more flexibility, more freedom to open up. So whatever works in this moment, settle into it. And then hands can go to the heart or grow your tree. You're doing your best to balance. And here's where that drishti, that focal point, very helpful. That deeper breath, feeling that connection to center, all of those integrating together to create more balance. And then release, let it go. So same kind of setup, lots of engagement through the left leg. You're opening your right knee out and then finding that foot placement, okay? And using your breath in that energetic way. The inhalation is lifting and lengthening you. The exhalation is grounding and centering you. And if you fall, it's all good, right? That's why we call it a yoga practice, because we are just doing our best. Falling is part of it. And we see falling as that lesson in our own patience and softening and surrendering into the art of progression rather than the trying to feel like we have to be perfect in the pose, right? We're going to be wobbly, we're going to fall, and that's okay. Now release. Okay, so coming into warrior 3. So similar feeling to what we felt in our spinal balance and tabletop. We want to avoid lifting the hip too much. Imagine there's that glass of water there as you come into it. And then the block, can come in handy here if you do want to use that block support. But right foot forward, hands to hips, and then start to feel the action of leaning forward and then pressing back through your left foot. So we're coming into this alignment essentially of possibly head, shoulders, hips, back foot, all in that alignment. Now you can use your left hand to rotate your hip down a little bit more. So you're feeling into that internal rotation. And then maybe you have your hands on your block to support you here today. You can also come into various arm expressions. So arms can sweep back, they can come out. That can feel helpful with counterbalance, or coming forward. But there's a lot of contraction within your muscles, standing leg, back leg, core, and then you're feeling a sense of lift and lightness through your heart center. Come all the way up, let that go. Switching sides, so anchoring through your left leg, hands to hips. And then slowly take your time, no rush. We hinge forward as we lift our right leg up and back. Dial your toes straight down. Feel that lift through the heart. Notice where you can soften. Maybe you use support or find a new arm position this side. But visualize that glass of water right at your tailbone. You want to keep your hips level. And sometimes that's hard to feel in space without actually bringing your hands to our hips. So you can always do that as well. Take one more deep breath in. Full breath out. And then release. Come all the way up. Let it go. So last balancing pose, half moon. Similar feeling actually to our triangle pose. So we'll start on our right side. So let's actually just step out like we did before. Rotate your toes forward. So kind of thinking that similar setup to triangle pose. And then block, very helpful. Bring the floor closer to you. I also find that helpful to avoid collapsing into the side body, which we want to try to avoid in this pose as well. So bend into the right knee a little bit. Right hand can come to the block, and then we lift our back leg. So thinking too, allow that top hip to slightly internally rotate, and that might help create a little bit more freedom as we expand into this. So press back firmly through your left foot, left arm reaching high, so we're stacking the shoulders. And we don't want to put too much weight into the right hand, whether it's on the block or the floor. So you're lifting and expanding, gazing wherever it feels best for you. And then ways to play to your edge. Maybe you gaze differently, forward or up. Maybe you take away your hand support, hands to heart. And if you fall, it's all good. We're doing our best to find the balance, but not getting too caught up in trying to be perfect. All right, release, and we'll just come to that second side. So think about triangle pose setup. Maybe you have your block there, bringing it to the front area of your mat space. And then we hinge forward, take flight, doing our best to find our balance, and thinking about that similar feeling that we felt in our triangle pose. You can let that top hip slowly rotate a little bit more to feel more freedom within your pelvis. Don't feel like your hips have to be perfectly stacked here. We're expanding upwards as we root down. Crown of head forward, right foot back. Feel into all this expansion in your body as you breathe through it. And then if you want to play to your edge a little bit more, just gaze differently or see what it feels like just to take away your hand support. Take just one more deep breath in. Full breath out. Try to find lightness as you land, coming all the way up. We'll come back to our wide-legged forward fold. So maybe this time we bring our arms behind our back, interlace, feel into the shoulder stretch. Now release all the way down and just pivot over towards your right foot. Come back into your tabletop position. And then if you did have your block at the back of the mat, just make sure you have that towards the front as we make our way back into our downward facing dog. Now bring your big toes together to touch and then lift through the right leg. Feel into three-legged down dog. Hips are level. Now start to shift forward and bring your foot forward in between your hands for a low lunge. So if you need to use your right hand to get your foot there, no worries at all. Use that support. Now setting up for our half pigeon pose. So start to heel toe your right foot over towards your left hand and then bring your right knee all the way down to the ground. So we want our right knee a little bit wider than our right hip. Hips are internally rotating forward. And then gaze back at your left leg and make sure your left leg is directly behind your left hip. Now, if this feels like way too much weight is pouring forward into your right knee, you can take reclined pigeon on your back, where you come all the way down and just cross right ankle above your left knee. Grab hold of the back of your left leg and take that hip opener. But if you are feeling pretty good here, but your right hip is really lifted, taking a block underneath your hip can add that extra support. And then you can start to lower down. You can even have a block underneath your head as well. And just start to feel into your outer hip, release your stretch. Coming more into a place of stillness. So we're not focusing so much on muscle activation and strength, but now we're just softening, stretching more into the connective tissue, feeling this ability to hold at that place of stillness so that our body can release. And there's tension that we're letting go of, not just physically, but mental tension as well. Sometimes we're not even fully aware of what we're gripping onto mentally that we can really soften into and let go of. Take just one more deep breath in. Full breath out. And then if you decided to take this pose on your back, you can just stay there. And we'll make our way back into our downward facing dog to switch sides. So big toes together, lift through the left leg, feel that internal rotation of your left hip. And then shifting forward like you're coming into plank, hug your knee in, step your foot all the way forward, drop your back knee. And then we're working our left foot over to the right wrist, Left knee works down to the ground, and just check in. Your knee is a little bit wider than your left hip. Hips are squaring forward. Right leg is directly behind the right hip. And then using a block for support if you need it underneath the left hip or the head as you settle closer to the earth. And it's pretty obvious where we feel it the most in the stretch into our hip. But notice too if there's tension cascading to other areas of your body, if you're tensing through the shoulders, through the jaw, just try to soften there as well. Just a few more deep breaths. And then slowly start to release. So if you are on your back, just hang tight there. We'll come back to our last down dog, really feeling into the length of the spine. And then slowly start to make your way down to your seat and onto your back. One more back bend, bridge pose. So feet about hip width apart, heels coming closer in towards your glutes. It can be helpful here too to have a block in between your legs to create more activation within that muscular engagement. But notice the natural curvature of your spine as you press your palms into the mat next to your hips. And then root down through your feet. Inhale, start to lift your hips up towards the sky. Feel your hamstrings, your glutes turn on more to help lift your hips. And then you can work your shoulder blades closer together or even interlace your fingers underneath your tailbone. But you're grounding down through your feet as much as you can, keeping the back of your neck long. Now slowly release your hips all the way back down. Buckle your knees in together. Have your feet as wide as your mat. Reach your arms up and over your head onto the ground behind you, and then grabbing onto opposite elbows here. So there is a little slight arch to your spine. And then now let your knees fall gently from side to side. And then hug your knees in towards your belly, anchoring down through your sacrum, your tailbone area. Lengthen your legs up towards the sky. You can grab onto the backs of your legs here. You can work your hands closer up towards your feet. And then just flex and point through your feet. Wiggle the toes. Give some gratitude for your feet for carrying you through this practice today. Maintaining that strength and stability as you align into your poses, finding more balance. And just elevating our feet above our heart is good for circulation, also calming for the nervous system. We're here for just a few more deep, steady breaths. Inhaling and exhaling in and out of your nose. And then now moving into our happy baby. This is our last pose of our practice. So you may have to lift up to grab onto the outer edges of your feet and then bringing your head back down as you drop your knees closer to the earth. You can also interlace peace fingers around your big toes. And if it's not quite accessible for you to grab onto your feet, you can also grab onto the backs of your knees as you draw your knees closer down. And then we just rock a little bit from side to side. Last little bit of movement, stretching and releasing before we come into our Shavasana. Now lengthen your legs out long, coming full circle to how we started. And as you close your eyes down, just notice how you feel now. The changes in your body, your mental focus, your energy. Remembering that everything is connected. And when we move and breathe and align our bodies in ways that create more strength and flexibility, smoother current of energy running through us, more presence within our mind. And it's all about just being patient with your practice, staying consistent. And you will start to see those positive changes. Now just continue to relax your body, enjoying these moments of stillness that are all for you. Now, I will always encourage a longer Shavasana, but if you need to get back into the rhythm of your day, and just bring a little bit of movement into your fingers and your toes. You can also do a full body stretch, reach the arms up and over. And then rolling over onto your side, pausing for a moment. And then coming all the way up to a comfortable seated position. And we always end our practice with just this acknowledgement, this honoring of the time and the energy and the effort we put in. So just bowing to yourself with a lot of love and gratitude that you took the time to practice yoga today. And I am so honored and grateful to be your guide. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope to see you soon.